All right, hello everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started in a minute. Go ahead and let me know that you can hear me. Got people coming on in. I know I'm running a little behind. There we go. All right, fantastic. So since we are running a little bit behind, I'm going to give a couple of minutes to let some more people flood in. And if you have any questions as we go along, just type them in the chat. We also have a Q&A section to help you out there. But we'll go ahead and we'll get started right now. All right. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chelsea Cohen. I am the co-founder of Stockouts.com. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into talking about inventory, but more specifically talking about inventory and profitability and why it's important to truly understand inventory systems and how to set your business up for success in that way. There are a lot of fees that are coming up in this past 6 months or so that have made it more difficult to be profitable on Amazon. So we'll talk a little bit about those and how you can use tactics to offset those as well. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. All right, I assume you can see my screen. Let me know if you cannot see my screen. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. So a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I'm the co-founder of So Stocked, and I've been selling on Amazon since 2014. I have been immersed in Amazon inventory specifically for about 4 years now. And I've spoken to many different sellers, 6, 7, and 8-figure sellers, specifically on inventory and supply chain and the struggles and being able to identify some of those common threads as to why certain things keep happening, such as stockouts and sales spikes, problems with supply chain. I've written over 50 articles on supply chain and inventory management for e-commerce, been on dozens of podcasts, and our software is recommended and used by top masterminds, influencers, agencies, and aggregators as well. So I have a wide breadth of knowledge in terms of my exposure to a lot of different Amazon sellers and e-com sellers in inventory. So I wanted to, with that knowledge set, jump in and first and foremost talk about the most important thing, which is getting your numbers right. So let's go ahead and talk about how it could possibly be that using the data that Amazon gives you, and we all have the same, we access the same data. How is it possible that the numbers could actually be dishonest, or the numbers could be analyzed in such a way that would cause you to stock out? We're going to do that in terms of talking about concepts and then also talking about a case study. So one of the things that we implement inside of SoStock and that we encourage anyone, regardless of your system, to be implementing is called daily adjusted velocity. If you think about your sales velocity, when you look at the sales velocity, is how many sales per day you're making, or how many sales over a period of time. And oftentimes, especially when we're planning for, let's say, the Christmas holiday, we're looking at total sales in a period of time, and we're not using averages. And that can be a problem if you are not analyzing that data properly. For example, you stock out during that period of time. You stock out for 2 weeks during Christmas, and then you don't remember that happened, or you don't account for that happening. Or an influencer mentioned you on a morning news station or something like that, and then you had this huge sales spike and these huge sales numbers occur for a couple of days after that. Those things are anomalies that need to be removed. And so that's why we call it daily adjusted velocity. It's not just daily sales velocity, it's daily adjusted velocity, and it's adjusted for those things that are not going to repeat themselves. If you think about daily adjusted velocity, just kind of replace that in your mind with true velocity. What is your true sales velocity on a daily basis? So let's go ahead and look at a case study. Now, this case study is from a seller who came in to So Stocked. He is in the wholesale space, and he was looking for a solution because his current solutions were not working well for him. He was surprised though when he plugged into SoStock and his projections, they seemed quite high to him. His competing software that he had been using for years was telling him he was selling 8 units a day. And then he had so much trouble with the software that he put his best sellers into a custom spreadsheet that he created. And that spreadsheet was telling him he was selling 10 units a day. He was still having stockout problems though. So he tried SoStock to see what results he would get and found that SoStock was actually telling him 15 units a day. And that was his true velocity. So he was wondering why. Why is it you have the same data, right? All 3 of these systems use the same data. So how is it possible that the numbers are so different? And it all comes down to the formulas that you're using, and specifically this point about daily adjusted velocity, because the velocity can be adjusted, but if it's not adjusted the right way, you're going to have problems. So let's go ahead and look at what are the factors that create a stockout calculation. So first and foremost, you need to know, did you even have stock? Did you have stock to sell at Amazon if you're doing just FBA at Amazon, right? Now, this is something that can be pulled from Amazon's historical API, but if you're not doing API pulls, this would be something that you would need to track. So that's that first question, did you have stock? Now, the second question is, was there an unusual interruption to your normal sales velocity? So some examples of this would be right before, or you go into a stockout, or right after you come out of a stockout, you have those kind of slower sales days while you're ramping down or ramping up again while your product's coming back into stock. Or you have those days where you're stocked out, but Amazon finds 1 unit and sells that 1 unit during that stockout period. And then of course you have those times where Amazon suspends your listing and you have inventory there at FBA, but you have a sales interruption. So all of these things are factors that some systems do not account for. So you need to understand how your stockout calculation is being handled. And this is where you get such variability in the calculation itself. So here's how this would work. If we're looking at the competing software and what that competing software was calculating versus what we choose to calculate, we look at these different factors. So those periods of time when, yes, there was stock on those days, but in those periods of time, there was a significant change. So we usually like to say anything that's 30% or less of your average daily sales. So if you're selling 100 units a day, all of a sudden you sell 23 one day, you sell 1 another day, and you sell 13 another day. Some formulas are calculating those as in-stock days. However, we factor them as stockout days because those are not going to tend to repeat themselves if you can avoid a stockout. So we need to remove that data, especially if we're doing averages such as a short-term average, like a 30-day average. If you don't remove this data, you can have significant variance in the daily sales velocity. You can see that the calculation on the right, calculating the stockout, the partial stockouts as in-stock days, gets us to 90 units a day in terms of sales velocity, whereas the actual velocity is 100 units a day. So if you're ordering, say, 4 months at a time, and you are short 10 units a day for 4 months, that significantly impacts your ordering and under ordering to a significant degree. So having a good stockout calculation is vitally important. On the flip side, this also applies to sales spikes, where you would remove the sales spike so that you could have a more honest portrayal of what you're going to be doing into the future. So this is the first and foremost one of the reasons that people do stock out. And in talking to sellers, there was another thing that continued to occur towards the very beginning of when I started taking calls with the Amazon sellers that we worked with in the initial onboarding process for SoStock, and identified, even before restock limits, even before the supply chain chaos, what was that one thing that sellers were doing consistently that was causing them such problems, and specifically causing them stock out problems. And that is something that I call marketing inside of a vacuum. Marketing and inventory are kind of two different sides of the equation. There's actually marketing, inventory, and cash flow, and they all need to work together. And if they don't work together, if one piece is wrong, you're going to have problems, right? So marketing has tended to be that problem because we're so marketing focused as a community, and we really like these marketing hacks, right? You get a PPC hack or something, some listing optimization tweak that increases your sales by, your conversion by 8%. All of these things are great, but they need to be vetted out against our inventory. So getting your inventory and your marketing teams on the same page becomes extremely important. I call it marketing across the entire catalog, and it becomes more and more necessary because of restock limits. Of course, restock limits haven't been as much of a problem lately, but there are some other things that have kind of cropped up to make to kind of replace those as issues in terms of why you need to be right on top of your inventory and moving your inventory, even if restock limits aren't a problem. And we're seeing people start to be a little bit lax in their inventory because they don't have those restock limit problems. But we'll talk later on toward the end of the presentation on what are these other problems that actually are kind of flying under the radar that could lead to really crushing what you have left of your profit margins. So this marketing and inventory coordination is important. We call it inventory-minded marketing. So let's go ahead and get into how you work those two teams together in a few simple reports. So here are the reports. Marketing has to give a marketing report to inventory. That seems relatively obvious, but it's something that is really missing in a lot of Amazon businesses. And so simply getting this in, having your marketing team give marketing plans to your inventory team. If you're marketing and inventory and everything, all it is just kind of, identifying that you have a marketing hat and you have an inventory hat, and just getting some organized systems in place. So this is what, so we'd have marketing plans, and then we have 4 different reports that inventory should be providing to marketing. Inventory has in the past taken a relatively passive role in this whole system. They've, been kind of reactionary as, okay, now we have to order inventory and let's do that calculation. But they actually should be sending data to the marketing team to keep the business healthy enough so that it doesn't get into these problems of overstocking and stocking out, and big problems with having to remove inventory or paying tons of fees for storage, right? So let's first go into the inventory-minded marketing planner. And if you're interested in downloading this, you can go to sostocked.com/tools, and you can download that. There's a video tutorial, and it's all set up for you to simply make your own copy and then start using that within your business. So here's some of what goes on in this report. You look at every single SKU, and then you need to decide, how are you calculating your daily adjusted velocity, right? Are you looking at 30 days? Are you looking at an average of 30, 60, and 90 days worth of velocity? Are you using a manual velocity because you have no data because it's a new product, for example? Are you using last year's sales because you're planning for Christmas? So what is that data that you're using to calculate for this period of time? And then you have trends. So this is helpful if you've got a product that has grown over the years. So you can do a year-to-date trend, looking at this year versus the previous year. You can also do, let's say, a month-to-month or quarter-to-quarter. So if you've got a product that you're launching and you want to see what that growth is, you can calculate that trend. And then you have additional sales growth, which is let's say you're doing a PPC campaign and you have specific SKUs that you plan on growing the sales by 10%. You would plug that in there. And that way the inventory team can take that 10% and increase the current sales velocity by 10% and see if, if there's going to be a stock out because of it, or do they need to increase their next order because of it, right? Let's see. Someone asks, could you share a link to where to download these files, please? Yes, I'm going to go ahead and throw that into the chat as well as we're going. But to continue on, so the inventory minded marketing planner, the next thing that we are going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at sales events or lightning deals. And this can be any type of sales event. So for example, if you have, let's say, an email campaign that you're doing or an influencer campaign, you would stick the date range, right? It could be just a one-day thing, or it could be over a series of days, and then the total number of units that you plan to move during that time. And there I dropped the link right in the chat there, sostocked.com/tools with an S at the end. And then lastly, after that, you're also looking at seasonal sales spikes. So, and this is all manual. This is stuff that can be, if you are a SoStock user, can be plugged in to the system and calculated automatically. But we also, if you go to the sostock.com/tools, we have an inventory DIY spreadsheet for those of you who, let's say, have one or two products and you're looking to do it yourself until you scale your business up. So there's those seasonal sales spikes, the date range, what time period, let's say it's summer, and then the percentage increase that you think your product is going to increase for that period of time. All right. All right, now let's get into some of the proactive reports that the inventory team should be sending to the marketing team. And many of these reports are going to sound a little bit the same or similar. I'm going to explain to you how each of them is slightly different and what they should be used for, how the marketing team should be looking at these reports and how they should be applying them to their marketing plan. Because all of these reports actually will shed some light on the health of the business and what marketing strategies should be employed to make sure that your inventory and your profits stay as high as they possibly can be. Because as we let inventory age in our account, we incur more and more fees, and every single month that it sits there, we're actually becoming less and less profitable. And then we'll get into a little bit of, if you have to create removal orders, how damaging that is to your bottom line as well, especially with a new change that has cropped up in the past couple of months that no one is really talking about right now. We're actually going to be pushing out a little article that I'm putting together specifically on removal and disposal fees and what's going on there. It's actually pretty nuts. So these reports become more important than ever. And the first one is the Stockout risk report. And that's going to look at your when your product might be stocking out. So we'll say, this list of SKUs that's popping up might stock out if we don't make a change. Shows what day it's going to stock out, how many days it might be stocked out for until another order comes in, and then any of the past stockouts. Let's say look at a percentage, and this product is stocked out, like here, 29% of the year. Well, you know that there's something wrong with the supply chain or with your forecasting if you're constantly stocking out on this product. And so it'd be a good idea to start diving into why this stock out is occurring and kind of fix that, right? So if you don't have SoStock, I want to give you the calculation that you should be using to create a stock out risk report. If you wanted to create this on Excel, for example. And so what you want to look at is your total inventory, and then divide that by your daily adjusted velocity. And that's going to give you your days of remaining stock. So once you know that you've got your days of remaining stock, let's say you've got 30 days of remaining stock, you know that from today, 30 days from now, you're going to be out of stock. So that's what that calculation does for you. All right, now let's talk about the slow sellers report. Now, slow sellers report is specifically designed, it's going to sound familiar or similar to some of the other reports that we talked about, but this one is what I refer to as the move it or lose it SKUs. These SKUs are focused on a minimum and a maximum sales velocity, right? These are not the SKUs that you're looking to completely get rid of and never stock again. These are the ones that are kind of borderline, where if they do worse than they're doing right now, we're going to have to kill those products. We have to get them to do better. So pick a minimum and a maximum range that you consider slow sellers. Let's say it's between 5 sales a day and 20 sales a day. And if we can get out the top of that report and push those into being viable products, then we might have some success with these particular SKUs. So it's kind of the red flag report as well. It's a sign to the marketing team that they need to start marketing these products pretty quickly, or these products are going to start to incur fees and could eventually start affecting your profit margin, right? Your catalog. And that's one of the interesting things, is that you've got some of these slow sellers and you don't really pay attention to them, but the cost that they continue to incur can start having damaging effects on your entire catalog's profit. You may have a couple of, and that's some of the reports that we're looking to develop out in the near future, is you may have some products that are weighing down the margins across your entire catalog. So if you get rid of a couple of products, it may be that you then can start increasing those margins for yourself. All right, now let's go to, so basically, what this report will tell the marketing team is, these are the products to ramp up sales for. And if you don't get these products to go to move out the top of this report, they're going to move out the bottom of this report, and they're actually going to fall into the next report, which is your liquidation report. These are the products that you don't plan to restock. You need to either sell through them or you need to remove them from FBA. And the way that you determine this is to look at a minimum. So anything under 5 units a day, let's say, right? It's going to be right below what you put as your minimum for the previous products, right? The previous report. So anything less than the slow sellers report is going to go into the liquidation report. It's important to devise a plan for these because, as I mentioned, there are a few problems with this. One is that you are incurring a ton of fees, and another is that it's taking up space. So if you have restock limit problems still, that would be a problem. If you have a low IPI, it's affecting your IPI score. So getting rid of those products becomes important for those reasons. And I recommend that the marketing team should be coming up with a plan to move that inventory through FBA, through Amazon, not only because you can then recoup some of that cash flow, but it's also, and then you can also use it for increasing your IPI score, but removing inventory is getting very, very expensive. It's actually getting very expensive. You may, if you need to remove the inventory, you can't sell through it. You may look into Amazon's liquidation program. Their liquidation program, while it's not as good as selling through, there are less fees associated with liquidating a product than there are with removing a product. And we're going to go into a little bit of detail. I don't have a slide on it, but since we're just developing out the ramifications of the new changes to removal orders and removal fees, just going to kind of give you a little bit of insight into that later on in the presentation. So now this last report is called the FBA Overstock Report. And these are SKUs that often will show up in those other two reports, but they're also best sellers that could be in these reports as well. So this report becomes helpful to being able to isolate excess inventory. Let's say 90 days, anything over 90 days, we'll say you consider excess inventory. And so the marketing team knows that this is inventory that they need to create a plan to move because it's costing more and more money the more it sits there. So it can, we can clear space, we can avoid fees, we can also boost restock limits or IPI score if that's necessary by creating a plan to move this inventory. And then we can also use it to increase ranking. So if you have best sellers on here and you want to compete for a new keyword, for example, you can use this excess inventory as an asset, as inventory can be considered as some sort of energy or currency that we can use to buy more ranking, right? We can expend more at a discount to buy more ranking. So that's one way that you can do it. If you have something on your overstock report and on your slow sellers report, that's great because you need to move those slow sellers up and out the top of that report. So having that overstock inventory becomes extremely valuable. So when the marketing team sees products on overstock and slow sellers, they should be excited and be able to come up with a decent plan for moving that inventory. We're going to go ahead and jump into logistics flexibility. And I do have a question here. Where is the link to these? So we have a link to the marketing planner. And then as for the other reports, those reports are in SoStock. So if you're a SoStock user, you can either find those reports or make your own. The Stockout report is there. It's called Stockouts Future. And then the other reports are reports that you need to set the parameters for. So you would just go in there and choose your filters to filter the parameters for those. If you need help, you can reach out to the support team on how to build out. They're called dashboards. So you would build out special dashboards for those. And so you can reach out to the support team at helpme@sostocked.com and ask them for the tutorials on how to build out dashboards, or you can go to the help desk and type in dashboard. All right, let's go ahead and talk briefly about logistics flexibility. This is a way of running your business to work to avoid stockouts and to kind of do it in a way that you save money. If possible, you can save some additional money as well. And this plan, we had someone on the call who had seen me talk about logistics flexibility. We had someone on the call probably about a month and a half ago who said once they instituted the logistics flexibility, they avoided running out of stock. So they didn't have any stockouts after doing this. So it's extremely valuable to have this set up. And it's really having, a plan A, B, C, and D in terms of your logistics. So one final note on that is that when I hear someone stocked out, I'll have a conversation and it'll often come up, oh yeah, I'm stocked out right now, I can't stand it, or I just stocked out, a month ago. And I always like to ask why. Why is it that you stocked out? What was happening that you stocked out? And almost invariably it is from the same reason, right? One is that, supply chain problems happen. That's become more common since 2020. But if that wasn't the problem, if it wasn't that, my supplier's city got shut down or something like that, it was generally this specific factor. And that is that somebody had all their stuff. So I created this golden rule. I actually created this rule in 2015 because I experienced a problem where I let Amazon have all my stuff and they quote unquote lost it. And I didn't have any backup. I just basically, my husband was trying to call the Joliet, Illinois warehouse and says, I'll drive a truck there, I'll unload it myself. And they, of course, that's not how Amazon works. But back in 2015, that was, what we were experiencing was we let Amazon have all our stuff and Amazon, kind of screwed us. And so many of you have probably experienced the same thing. Amazon taking all your stuff and not checking it in for 5 or 6 weeks, or you put all your stuff on a boat and it gets stuck at port. something like that, where someone has all your stuff and it's kind of being held hostage and you really don't have any say. So restructuring for logistics flexibility starts obviously at the supplier level. And let's say you are sending a container, and you usually send a full container load. What you would want to do is to order a container plus a month or two of inventory and have that extra inventory sitting at your supplier's warehouse. That becomes just in case inventory. Prior to 2020, we used to run on what is generally referred to as just-in-time inventory, meaning that we're sending inventory just in time for it to arrive and check in on time. Just-in-case inventory became very, very popular starting in 2020, which is that people started ordering more inventory to have just in case. So this is what we would call just-in-case inventory. And so you would order a little bit of extra, you would leave it at your suppliers. Now, this starts to get more expensive because if you're placing larger orders, you're obviously going to be paying more. So there are a couple of things that you can do to sort of mitigate some of those cash flow issues. You would negotiate with your supplier to, of course, pay that 30% down. Let's say 30/70 is your agreement with them. You pay 30% on all of the inventory, and then you only pay 70% on what you ship out. And then so whatever they're holding, let's say you ship out your ocean stuff, you pay that 70% on that. And then you've got the extra inventory, the month or two of additional inventory. Usually your supplier won't charge you for holding that inventory for a couple of months. So you have them hold that inventory for a couple of months. You're not paying storage fees on it. And then you keep it there. And if you have to send it out by air, you send it out by air and you only pay them when it does go, when it does leave. So it helps to kind of control that cash flow. And the idea is that you won't have to send it by air. So knock on wood, everything goes right and your ocean inventory arrives on time. Great. Then you can put that inventory on the next boat and do it all over again and repeat that cycle. But if it doesn't arrive and it's stuck at port or whatever is happening, you then know that date when you have to send your inventory by air so it'll arrive to Amazon on time. So you have that stock sitting at your supplier's warehouse to be able to do that. So that is how you would want to set up your system. And then of course, you can send it to your 3PL, you can send it to FBA. And so that's the general game plan. But of course, then we have the local side of inventory. So the continuation of this rule, of this logistics flexibility, is to take the same idea and move it to your local warehouse. So you have your 3PL and you have your less than truckload or your full truckload that you're sending off to Amazon. And the issue that some people have is they send everything all at once and they don't hold extra inventory at your 3PL. We're still experiencing Amazon taking up to 4 weeks to check in inventory, full truckload or less than truckload. And that is becoming less common, but it's still happening in some places. We've had sellers in our Facebook group who have complained of this. So if that happens and you have excess inventory sitting at your 3PL, you can just put it on a small parcel delivery truck. These are much more reliable and faster at getting inventory checked in because Amazon checks small parcel delivery orders in immediately, whereas with your trucks, they often park those full trailers in their parking lot until they're ready to unload it. So it's a different unloading. Small parcel delivery is referred to as oftentimes as a live unload, is what they usually do, which is it arrives and they unload it immediately. And then of course, the final piece to the logistics flexibility is to have some way to fulfill your orders, even if Amazon is letting you down. So I've said for a while, catchy phrase, even if Amazon is your only sales channel, it should not be your only distribution channel, which means even if you're only taking sales through Amazon.com, UK, whatever, you should have a way to get those orders to Amazon, even, or to your customers, even if Amazon doesn't have the capacity to check your inventory in on time. So you have a fulfilled by merchant solution to fulfill that inventory. All right, now we're going to get into the profit side of things. This is something that I am getting more and more interested in talking about, and kind of diving more and more into the intricacies of this. And it's, I think, a very underexplored portion of our businesses. And large sellers who are extremely successful will be able to identify that these little details are where it's at. Marketing is great, but if you're marketing a product that's not profitable, there's no point. So bottom line, what did you keep in your pocket by the end of the year? What did that P&L say? Did you actually make any money? And so there's a concept called little hinges move big doors. It's a saying that's fairly well known, and that is just that you've got these big opportunities that open up with little tiny changes. If across your entire catalog you could add an extra 10 cents in profit per unit, that could have immense benefit to your bottom line. So little hinges move big doors is what we're going to talk about in terms of what are those little hinges, what are those little tiny tweaks that you can make in your business that will mean huge increases in profit. The opposite of little hinges move big doors is actually the reason I started Stock to begin with, and that is a concept of death by paper cuts. Death by paper cuts is this idea of all the little tiny cuts, all the little tiny pieces of profit that get whittled away by various different things. And a lot of sellers experience this when 2020 came about, and every year when FBA fees go up and all of these things that are constantly wearing away at our profit margin is death by paper cuts. And that's how, like I mentioned, Stocked got started. Was I wanted to find one of those things that I could control, right? And the first obvious thing was inventory. And so digging into further profit is a passion of mine, because it all fits in line with how to start to keep more of the money that we're making. And this all comes down to the concept of size. Size truly matters. Size is the most important thing when it comes to profit across the supply chain. And I call this profit optimization across the supply chain. So the things that you can do from the point that your inventory starts at your supplier to the point that it actually checks in, sells through, and arrives to your customer on the other end, there are ways to regain the profit, to lower the fees all across the line. So it all has to do with size. When we look at unit packaging, we see FBA fees. And of course, if you were hit by dimensional weight fees that were factored into FBA fees starting in January of this year, you really understand that the packaging size is extremely important, because Amazon charges you based on the size of your product. Then you have the carton packaging. If you're with a 3PL, every carton is going to be charged. It's charged a handling fee, it's charged a labeling fee, charged a pull fee for them to pull it off the shelves. There's all of these carton fees. You can have like up to $3.60, $4 in carton fees just for handling your cartons. Then you have the palletizing fees. Palletizing, you have to store every single one of those pallets. If you have a container that arrives and your products are, your cartons are not palletized, they're going to charge you to palletize those. There's all of these different fees that are involved. And then containers, that's going to equal shipping fees. So how do we, even if we have to pay a ton of money for each container, how are we able to reduce that? If we can't negotiate those fees down, what is a way that we can actually save money on our container shipping? So let's start with the packaging. So the packaging, essentially, because you're going to be charged for you're charged FBA fees, you're charged removal fees, you're charged storage fees, all based on the size of your product. And so finding a way to reduce that size can be extremely lucrative. Let's say, for example, you have a cream and you're selling this cream. Could you get that cream into a smaller container? Could you vacuum seal your product? Could you, take your silicone product and fold it differently? Are these things that you can do to reduce the size of that product, because you're going to be charged based on your product size and your product weight. One of the stories that I have, a friend of mine selling sunglasses, and had this big bulky case for the sunglasses. At some point he decided, why am I carrying with this big bulky case? It doesn't really increase the value of my product. So he switched to these sleeves, these cloth sleeves, and significantly reduced his FBA fees and his storage fees just by making that change. So that's first and foremost. If you can find a way to reduce your packaging and work with your supplier to do that, that can have a huge impact. The impact, however, can actually have enormous ripple effects, because when you make that product smaller, everything else becomes smaller as well. So let's kind of jump into the carton and the pallet side of things. The way that, if we're paying $3.60 per carton for handling, we want to have as few cartons as possible. We want to have as many units per carton as possible, right? Within Amazon's guidelines and within what's safe and smart for our product. So you want to figure out, what is that master carton going to look like? And most people, myself included, I've been guilty of this in the past, relied on our suppliers to tell us what that master carton was going to look like. And we've simply been, accepted that and probably been selling the same configuration for many years, and not realizing how detrimental it was to our bottom line. For example, Amazon has a guideline that your cartons can be up to 25 inches long. So you say, okay, well, I want to maximize my space, so I want 25 inches so I can put as many products in there as possible to have as few cartons as possible. And that sounds really, really smart. Getting as many units in there as possible is extremely smart. But on the other side, that actually causes more problems, because if you're looking at your cartons in a vacuum and you're not looking at your cartons and how they're going to fit on your pallets, you could get into that problem where you've got 25 inches for one carton, and then you've got pallets that standardly are 48 inches. 25 inches will only fit once on one side of that pallet, right? Because two 25-inch cartons equals 50 inches, and it will overhang 2 inches from that pallet, which is a violation of Amazon's rules. So the solution to it, I know it's a lot of heady stuff, it's a lot of math. The solution is actually to look at your unit dimensions and your pallet dimensions, and then to work it backwards and figure out how can I get as many units on this pallet and as few cartons on this pallet, as many units per carton and as many units per pallet, to be able to fully optimize that. And the answer is a lot of math. It's a lot of math. I know, because I figured it out. I created this huge spreadsheet with over 100 different calculations. It's a lot of work, but we actually made a free tool for that reason. So if you go to sostock.com/tools, you can see it down here at the bottom. You will find the master carton calculator, and it does that math. It figures out, based on your unit size and your pallet dimensions, what does that perfect master carton look like, and how do you stack it on your pallet? And we've had people test this out, and I'm going to show you an example. Now, this is there are some examples that are less extreme, and then some examples that may be more extreme, but I'll show you this example. It's an actual example of numbers that were plugged in by an actual seller, where the seller was utilizing, because of the box size, you have the ability to use up to 100% of that volume. It's called volume usage. He was using less than 50% because his box sizes were so non-optimized that he actually couldn't fit enough on without violating the rules that Amazon sets. So here's what was able to happen is to reconfigure this, the savings, the cost per unit significantly decreased when we were able to reconfigure it. This is the actual tool, the carton calculator tool that you can find at sostock.com/tools. So the savings was 93 cents per unit in just reconfiguring his packaging. Like I said, it's an extreme example, but it's a real example. So 93 cents per unit in savings. And then it shows how many fewer cartons he's using in this order. And we're doing it by order. So we say, how many units are you ordering? He was putting 1 unit per carton. Not sure why that was happening, but that was what he was doing. So we reconfigured it based on Amazon settings and based on what was optimum. And then we also were able to recover over $1,800 in savings per order. So you'll be able to see, if you use this tool, you'll be able to see a pack list saying, this is exactly how your cartons should be packed. This is exactly how your pallets should be packed. And then a savings report. This is what you're going to be saving, and here's how you're going to be saving. And so it takes all of that data and it breaks it all down for you. So this is a very powerful tool. We built it out because we couldn't find anything out in the market like it, and we're continuing to tweak and improve it as well to add more little kind of features for you to customize. So if you continue to go back, you'll see more and more changes coming. All right, now let's go into, we're getting close to wrapping up. I am going to talk about the dimensional weight fees in a second, but optimum packaging. So if you're paying $10,000 per container and you can't really control the costs on that end, you can control how that container shipping affects your total cost per unit. If you can get more units in that container than you could previously, then you can maximize your profit because you can disperse that cost over more units. So optimizing your container shipping can be extremely valuable. And there is a free tool that is available at peertopeer.com/load calc. And it builds you out a map of exactly how to load all of your packages. You can look at various different, you can say, put various different package dimensions and weight, and then it'll figure out how do we load this up. You would give that to your freight forwarder. Your freight forwarder, if they're a good one, should be able to help to facilitate implementing that on the origin side, and then on the destination side, give it to your 3PL, and that map should help them to optimize efficiency on unloading that, because they're going to be charging you, let's say pretty standardly $40 per hour for unloading. So the less unload time it takes, the more money you keep in your pocket. As far as optimizing, I'd like to always look at what are those annual profits that you could save by optimizing. And if you're planning on selling your business, what does that mean if you sell your business at a 5x multiple, right? A multiple of your profit. So we look at unit optimization. If we're reducing packaging, what does that do for our fees? Let's say carton optimization would save us $40,000. And this is, of course, just examples, but you kind of get an idea of what's possible. Pallet optimization saving us $15,000, and then that would turn into 75. Let's say we avoided expensive air freight because we started doing, we started getting our stockout calculations right. We started getting notifications that we needed to order well in advance. And so we're no longer stressing out on placing air freight. We actually had someone who was able to recover, I think, 60 cents per unit by no longer air freighting everything, because they had a system in place to place those orders properly and correctly. And they actually exited the business after that. So it had a great effect on their ability to increase their exit check. And then, of course, avoiding stockouts. We have a section in SoStock now that tells you how much money you may have lost from stocking out in the last year. And so 70 is a fairly, it's fairly average for some people. We've had people plug in $130,000 or $400,000, depending on the size of the business. So stocking out can have significant impacts. And so working to get that number down, especially before an exit, can be extremely important. So annually, it's almost $200,000 in savings that you can put back into products, that you can put into marketing. You can go on a vacation, whatever you want to do with that extra money in your pocket. And then on exit, at a 5x multiple, you're looking at close to $1 million in increase, right? In additional money that would be going to you based on that deal. All right, now let's talk about, we've got about 10 minutes left. We also want to have any questions, open to any questions. But we'll talk quickly about dimensional weight calculation. And like I mentioned, we don't have this in a slide, but this also affects removal orders. And that's something that seemed to slip through the cracks. And it was actually something that's it's a pretty big deal. Amazon made this announcement, and this announcement was that they're now doing what's called dimensional weight calculations inside of the FBA fulfillment orders. People saw their cost increase significantly. Some people, if you had a large product, your cost probably increased significantly. I have friends who sell a large product, a large lightweight product, and their fulfillment costs increased by 94% overnight. So there were some people that were really hit by this. The sneaky thing is that this calculation is also affecting removal orders and disposal orders, which can be pretty significant. And so it's crazy that people had all of a sudden overnight, their products were no longer profitable because of FBA fees. And yet at the same time that this was released, removal order fees went through the roof in the same exact way. So we're doing an estimate on a product that all of a sudden they with that one change, their removal order fees increased by about 300%, which is very significant when you have a product that's no longer profitable and you have to pull all that stock and you were given no notice. So it's kind of a crazy situation. So it's something to be aware of, and all the more reason to have a slow sellers report, a liquidation report, and have some of these plans for moving this inventory so that you don't end up paying a bunch of additional fees. And all the more reason to reduce that packaging, right? Get your packaging smaller so that you're not paying. So let's go ahead and talk about what dimensional weight fees actually are and why they actually exist. So dimensional weight fees are, it's a way of looking at the amount of space that a product takes up in relation to the actual weight. So the reason that this system exists is that trucks have two limitations. They have space limitations and they have weight limitations. They can't go over the amount of weight and they can't go over the amount of space that they have. So they want to make sure that you're paying for as much as you should be paying. And so if you have a big bulky product that is very lightweight and they're only charging you based on the weight, they're going to be able to have less money coming their way because your product fills up their truck far more than, let's say, a pair of barbells would, right? So they have this this calculation that they use, and the calculation is pretty simple. So this is something that carriers have been using for a long, long time. Amazon never really used this calculation until January. So this is how this calculation works. It's fairly simple. You look at your product. This is your actual unit, your product, unit length times width times height. And you divide it by a number called a dim divisor, which is just dimensional divisor, the number that you use to divide into, of 139. That's what commonly what carriers use, and Amazon's using the same dim divisor that, let's say, FedEx or UPS is using. The way that it breaks out is that they're either going to charge you based on your dimensional weight or your unit weight. Pillows are a really good example because they are large, but they're light. So if we look at this queen pillow, the product itself is 6 pounds. That's the unit weight. But when we do the dimensional weight calculation, it's actually 21 pounds. So you can see it's significantly more, more than 3 times the amount that it normally would be. So you can start to see how dimensional weight can have a huge impact on your fulfillment fees, but also your removal order fees, because, and we'll release it on Friday, tomorrow, but removal order fees are calculated the same way. The fees are a little bit different, but again, it's costing you a lot more now, especially if you have large products that are already suffering from dimensional weight fulfillment fee problems. Those removals are going to be more expensive. And again, if you look at removal versus Amazon liquidation, not normal liquidation, but Amazon liquidation, you're more incentivized to use Amazon liquidation than to remove your products, unfortunately, based on their fee structure now. It's pretty crazy. Just all of the ways that Amazon tends to do all these sneaky things to us. All right, so look at a real world example of what could changing the packaging do for my product. If I'm selling queen size pillows, and these are 2 real life examples that I pulled off of Amazon itself. One of the products is probably vacuum sealed and becomes large standard size, right? So it's large standard size. Before 2022, it was 3 pounds. Now with dimensional weight fees, it's 12 pounds. Now we've got another one that's small oversized. So the packaging is larger. It was 6 pounds. Now it's 21 pounds. And so when you look at the actual fees, the fee breakdown, and I ran this through the carton calculator, the carton pallet calculator. I ran this through the peer-to-peer load calculator for the container calculations, and it did all of the math to perfectly optimize these. And the one thing that's different about these, the only thing that's different about these is the size of the product itself, the packaging of the product itself. And you'll see that everything is almost double with all of these fees. And we've got $14.40 versus $26.10. That's a difference of $11.70 per unit. It's a significant difference. So you've got this product that all of a sudden is no longer profitable. And now they've got to pull this product because it's no longer profitable, but then it's going to cost them more money to do that. So it becomes very important to try to reduce your packaging all along the way. And also don't consider that you've seen the last of 3PLs. If you're launching a new product and you're not sure it's going to do well, and you send 1,000 units in and don't realize that it's going to cost you $3 to remove it. I remember back in the day when it used to be 20 cents or 30 cents per unit flat rate to remove any product. And now we're looking at products that are, $3, $4 to remove a single product because of these dimensional fees. Look in the email that we send out tomorrow for the post that we're doing specifically on removal order fees. You'll start to get a bit better picture of what we're talking about. But this is all the more reason to start implementing these inventory strategies really, really quickly, and just to be, watching like a hawk on those inventory, the inventory systems that you have or are putting in place. All right, that kind of wraps it up. We are pretty much on the dot. We're a couple of minutes away. If you have any questions, let me know. I know there were a couple of questions that we were able to answer in the chat. SoStock.com/tools is where you want to go to get those tools that I talked about. A little bit about SoStock for anyone who is not a SoStock user yet. We are fully customizable Amazon inventory management software. We do free migration of your data. And what that means is that if you have information on a spreadsheet or you have information in another software, you want us to help you to put it in there, we'll do a lot of the heavy lifting to be able to do that. We do one-on-one onboarding to make sure that you understand the system, as well as how to use it for your business and strategies that you can implement to improve your systems as well. Then we have customizable forecasting per SKU, including restock limits if you're still struggling with that. trends, sales spikes, stockouts, additional sales growth, all of these things that are in the planner that we talked about. Inventory timeline, which really goes for an entire year, shows you what your inventory patterns are going to be, when you need to order, when you need to transfer, how much inventory, are you going to experience any stockouts, that type of thing. Then we have an order and transfer tracking system to be able to track where your inventory is at and when it's going to arrive. Inventory dashboards. This is where all of those reports, those inventory reports that we talked about, the 4 inventory reports, slow seller report, overstock, all of those can be built out here, set to your personal business customization. And then we have a PO and transfer creation system. So once your forecasting is set up, you can click a button and it'll create the purchase order for you, or the transfer for your warehouse transfers to send right to your supplier or your 3PL to be able to manage all of that. We're on the App Store. So if you go to the Amazon App Store, you can see all of our reviews. We've been on the App Store for about 3 years now, been developing the system for 4 years now. If you have interest in going and giving us a try, we have a free trial at sostock.com. If you go up to the promo section, you click the promo button and you'll find the free trial there. If you have interest in connecting with me, you can go to sostock.com/connect. You can see a demo of the tool, as well as signing up and booking a live demo. We do live demos twice a week, so you can check that out. And then our tools are there as well. So if you forgot the sostock.com/tools link, most of the most helpful links are on the sostock.com/connect. If you can get my socials, if you do reach out to me on socials, shoot me a little message as well, because you know, if you have been on social media for any period of time, you know that there's a lot of spamming that goes along. So I want to know who you are, and just, you know, say, hey, I saw you on your webinar, let's connect, and I'd love to connect with you guys. All right, we are going to wrap up. Thank you guys so much, and again, look out for the email that we're sending out tomorrow. We will send out a replay, and yeah, I'm excited to have connected with you guys, and hope to see you on the next one. All right, bye.